Hey, welcome back to the shop. Thanks for stopping by. Before we get into this week's video, just wanted to give a shout out to Ron from Creations by Ron, who sent me a box of miscellaneous wood here to play around with. And so thanks for that, Ron. And I'll put a link to Ron's channel in the description if you want to go check him out. This week's video is going to be about kind of the evolution of stabilizing wood in my shop. I get asked a lot about, do you need to stabilize, what are you using for gear? And things like that, and we'll talk about the do you need to stabilize part of it after a bit. So this was the original vacuum chamber and pump that I bought. Okay, so it is a one-stage pump, 4.8 CFM. Pump seems to work good. It gets really warm, and I'll show that a little later on in the video. So this was the pump that came with it. This is the original set of gauges that came with it. So they were filled with glycerin, which was great. The pump did not come with any oil, which was a bit of a nuisance because it's kind of difficult to find a vacuum pump oil where I live. So that was a bit of a nuisance to try and find. So the reason I don't use this any longer, and not knowing any better at the time, is that this lid material, some of it isn't compatible with cactus juice resin, and this is one of them. So what happens is the cactus juice is going to splash up on this a little bit. It's bound to. It will weaken this, and it's really difficult to see in this camera, but I'm going to try and see if you can get a glimpse of it. So you can see there's little spider-like lines in the bottom of this. When you pull a vacuum on this, they get a lot more prominent. So if you watch Ben Worx, Ben actually had one of these things implode on him. And if I can find a link to that video, I'll put it in the description. So this is no longer safe to use, so I don't use this anymore. Now what I replaced it with is this one. And I bought just the vacuum chamber and the lid, and the gauges came with it, and the hose. This did not have glycerin in it. It should have, but it doesn't affect how it reads. Apparently, everything I've read about these things, it doesn't change how it reads. So I just drew a vacuum on this 5 or 6 minutes ago. I'm going to turn it back on again to show you where it goes, but to shorten the video up a little bit, I don't want to sit and look at a gauge going backwards. It actually goes past 30 inches of mercury, but in the 5 minutes that it's been sitting there, it's dropped, over 2 inches of mercury already, and that's no good, and it won't hold a vacuum. Now it's going down slowly, but you can't leave this overnight, because when you come back, you'll be right on zero. And what happens is you've drawn air out of the piece of wood that you're trying to stabilize, and as soon as it goes back down to zero, the cactus juice goes into those cells that got the air pulled out of them, which isn't all the air that was in the piece. And then it takes even more vacuum to draw the cactus juice back out so that you can get the rest of the air back out. So this one, I can't leave it overnight because it'll go back to zero and I come back out the next day, which is a real nuisance, to be quite honest. And this isn't a pro-con video of which one to buy, which one not to buy. I'm not going to get into these ones, where they're from or not, but I will say, make sure that you buy the right lid material. This is supposed to be the right lid material according to the description. But you can see where some cactus juice splashed up against it, and it seems like it's kind of doing something funky there. You can see this goes up to about 31 inches of mercury, which is interesting because it shouldn't go that high. Okay, so this is a new system that I just got in. This came from Le Dab in Montreal. I buy my cactus juice resin from them as well. Not paid to promote any of this. I'm just showing you these. Again, this isn't a sell you a vacuum chamber video. It's just showing you the difference in them. So this one is actually a 4 CFM 2-stage pump, and you can run those longer than the single stage. They don't get as hot. But vacuum pumps are not meant to run for long periods of time. They're meant to pull a vacuum on it, shut them off, lock up the valves, and let the chamber hold its vacuum. And this one will drop 2.5 inches of mercury in 24 hours, and I have tested it, and it's pretty good that way. Now, this other one goes up to 31 or 32 inches of mercury. This one will not. And so there's a chart that comes with it that says that the ideal vacuum for where I live in elevation is about 29.5 inches of mercury. The pump capacity is 25. So I get about 27, and I'll show you where it goes up to here. This one came with oil for the pump, with glycerin in the gauge, all pre-assembled. All I had to do was put the hose on And that was all that I needed to do with this. So there was no pre-assembly. It's really, and again, it's hard. I don't know where you can find glycerin. Maybe it's easy to get, but it also says though, and in relation to the other gauge, if there's no glycerin in there, it will still read accurately. I think the glycerin just takes away if there's any vibration. So I'm going to charge this one up and show you where it goes to. It's a bigger chamber, so it does take a longer time to fill or to get a vacuum pulled. Now with this one, you may actually have to hold down on the top to get it to start, but it's starting up fine. So it actually took a little longer where this is a 10-gallon, not a 5-gallon chamber, and where it's a 4 and not a 4.8 CFM pump for this one to get up to full capacity of 27 inches of mercury. Okay, so something to remember about vacuum chambers. When you turn the pump off, always close the shutoff valve for the incoming vacuum, because if you turn off the pump with this still open, it's going to want to pull, it could pull the oil out of your pump into the chamber. So you always turn this off first. You hear the difference in the pump, and then you turn off the pump. And so this one is pretty good. It holds its vacuum really well. It always backs off a little bit at the start, but I left it overnight and it did drop a couple or three inches. So much different than the other ones. These pumps are sitting at about 32.5, plus or minus, they bounce up and down. So I'm going to turn both pumps on and we're going to time it, and we're going to check the temperature after 5 minutes and after 10 minutes to show the difference in how they heat up. So while this little experiment's going on at high speed, just want to thank everyone who subscribed to the channel and watches the videos. I really appreciate it. If there's anything in this video you're not sure about or have questions about, please do leave a comment and ask, and I'll be sure to answer any questions I get. Since I don't actually have any wood to stabilize in this video, I will put a link to the very first video that I put up, which was just supposed to be a test, but folks asked me to leave it up there. And it is of the original vacuum chamber that I bought when it was brand new, the very first test run of it, and it just kind of shows you what wood looks like while it's stabilizing. Okay, so I took readings at 5 minutes and 10 minutes, and then I let them go to 15, which is, again, longer than you're supposed to let these things go for, according to the manufacturers. But there was not much difference at all at 5 minutes and at 10 minutes. But at 15 minutes, there's a little bit of difference in how they run now to the outside of the pump. I'm going to shoot both of those. This one feels much hotter to the touch, so I'm just going to shoot the outsides of these pumps. So this one is 55, 54.5 to 55. This one, 47. So this does run hotter, no question. So they did tell me that the two-stage pump will run longer. It's safer to run longer than the single-stage one. But that's pretty warm. Like you wouldn't want to hold your hand on that for very long. So again, if you want to run these things overnight, that's 15 minutes. It's going to get hotter than that again. Okay, so now the question is, why do you stabilize and do you have to? Well, there's all kinds of people out there who are doing hybrids that don't stabilize. And so no, you don't have to. What I found, and you can kind of see it here, I don't know if you can see it well or not, but this was the very first hybrid piece that I did. I didn't have any vacuum chamber. I dried the wood down to 0%, and I measured that. So I dried it and weighed it, dried it and weighed it. When I stop losing weight, I know that I'm at 0%. But I can feel all the transition lines between the resin and the burl. This is maple burl. So it's really difficult to see. I'm not sure if the light reflected in this you can tell or not, but I can feel the transition between the two. And in some places, and again, it's going to be really difficult for the camera to catch this, but in some places you can see where this just, it's not separated, but it's not a great bond. So this wood can continue to expand and contract. This resin isn't going anywhere. And that's why I stabilize everything, because these are typically higher end pieces. They're worth a lot more money than just a regular burl bowl, obviously. Now, that's not to say that when you stabilize your burl or your wood and you cast it in resin that you're not going to feel this transition, because if the resin's harder than the burl, it's going to sand differently, or vice versa. So you will, lots of times you will feel the transitions, but not, at least they're stable and your wood's not going to keep on moving and it's not going to get worse. So that's why I stabilize. So I hope that answered a few of the questions that I've been asked and sheds a little bit of light on vacuum chambers and compatibility. That's the most important thing. You know, don't get one that's not compatible with stabilizing resin, because it really isn't safe. And again, I didn't know that when I started. So if you see this before you get started, hopefully it'll save you the expense of buying the wrong one. I would have about $550 tied up in this original setup, plus the replacement chamber that I bought. And the new one, I would have about $800 tied up in this new set. Had I bought the new one first, you know, I'd be out the $250. But I would have not spent the extra $550. Now, granted, I do have that vacuum pump to use on my vacuum chuck, so it's certainly not a total write-off. But the most important thing, again, is to get one that's going to be safe. So I am going to show a little bit more of the stabilizing process in future videos. I don't have anything in here ready to stabilize right now, so I didn't. But look for that in the next hybrid video. So thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.